everybody said, well, you need that chair to think in. I'm more of I need a steering wheel in front of me.
Yeah, I was gonna say you have a chair, but it's in your truck.
Yeah. And so, a lot of times I'm very intentional on if I'm thinking on something, I'll listen to a podcast or something on it, or I'll just turn it off that time and just think for a little bit, especially if I'm on a rabbit trail in my head. A lot of times I don't even hear the podcast almost because it causes that rabbit trail. But
So it's so cool because see, I'm different than that because if I start on a rabbit trail, I have to write it down or I won't forget it. You're auditory, so even in your own head, when you hear something,
Right.
you're so good about that. If I am thinking about something when I'm driving, it's going to be out the door for me because I have to go back and listen to it again and hope that I can capture that same thought because I don't write it down,
Right.
which is why I have loads of journals and you have loads of stuff.
Well, welcome to Pillow Talk. I'm Grant. This is my wife, Stephanie. And after almost 38 years of marriage, we've discovered how to communicate for better understanding and yoke our differences to pull stronger toward a common purpose.
As certified marriage coaches, we want to help reignite passion and connectedness in your marriage through intimate, authentic, and unguarded conversations. Now let's have some pillow talk.
Let's do it. Well, welcome to Pillow Talk.
Welcome. Spring is in the air.
It is very nice here in Oklahoma. So we want to continue our series. We've been talking about the 15 laws to thrive in marriage.
What a great time to talk about that in the spring. Hey,
I like
we actually didn't plan that, but
no, we didn't.
That sounds like we should have done that more intentionally.
Yeah, it does. So the reason we're doing this podcast is because it's spring.
It's spring, yes. We want to have a picture, and I keep losing my earpiece. I'm so sorry. Okay.
And so last week we talked about the mirror, and this week it almost sounds like the same subject by the title, but it really is not. It's called reflection, and we are really excited about this one. I like the thought of reflection. I like what it produces. It's really kind of just a neat.
Yeah, so it's not reflection
growing
when
process.
You look in the mirror and what you see back is reflected necessarily. It's about thinking back on what you just experienced, right?
Right. So what that does is it creates an insight.
I like that.
So it's really good that when you're married, and again, this is a growth process even as an individual, but as a married couple, it's good to reflect for the sake of insight of where you are, where you're going, where you want to go. So a lot of times, and I say even insight on what you're learning.
I like that. I keep thinking that word, insight. It's your inward sight.
Oh, I like that. I never put two and two together like that before. So I think that's enough to call it good.
Okay, we done?
We just call it. So everyone needs to do it. It's something you can do separate and or together. For me and Stephanie, we're more of a separate and bring it together.
Yeah.
At a later date after we've already done it, and or spent the time reflecting on things.
I think what's cool about that is that you're not, especially for somebody like me who tends to be very harmonious. And if we just talked about things on the onset without having separate space, I think I would lean more towards always having your view of things. Not that your view is wrong, but your view is you. So when I look inward and what is my sight line, what is my perception of something, and then when I bring it to you and we come together, it's really always really fascinating how we're looking at the same beach ball, aren't we?
Oh, right.
We're describing it a little differently. So it's
we need to bring the beach ball on sometime.
We do. It's a very neat process to do that separately. So it's not that we can't. It's not that we have to do things separately. We just have really enjoyed the process of seeing what we each bring to the table. And a lot of times we don't even have a subject. We won't be saying, hey, let's reflect on this week. It's more, hey, what's been going on with you this week? What has God been showing you? And when we start to talk about it, it's like, oh my gosh, me too. But it's just a little different view.
Right.
So I think that's what reflection is too.
Even if it's separate things, it's amazing when you bring them together, how it fills in some gaps.
Sure.
Because
they tie in. Yeah. They tie in together.
So one of the most important things that I've noticed with us is if you don't plan it, you don't do it. So it's vital that we say, and this is like with you, you're very scheduled, so it works
I
out
am.
really good for you. And with me, it's almost like with me, I've got to be in the exact right position. Everybody says, well, you need that chair to think in. I'm more if I need a steering wheel in front of me.
Yeah, I was going to say you have a chair, but it's in your truck.
Yeah. And so, a lot of times I'm very intentional on if I'm thinking on something, I'll listen to a podcast or something on it, or I'll just turn it off that time and just think for a little bit, especially if I'm on a rabbit trail in my head. A lot of times I don't even hear the podcast unless it causes that rabbit trail. But
so it's so cool. See, I'm different than that because if I start on a rabbit trail, I have to write it down or I won't forget it. You're auditory, so even in your own head, when you hear something, you're so good about that. If I am thinking about something when I'm driving, it's going to be out the door for me because I have to go back and listen to it again and hope that I can capture that same thought because I don't write it down, which is why I have loads of journals and you have loads of stuff in your brain.
And loads of little notes that I can't find.
Well, but whatever, you don't always need the notes.
I do know the importance of journaling it, and I think about anybody needs to. But for me, it just seems to be a deal to where I don't always have a journal, or I'm just not real good at spending my time journaling.
You're just phenomenal, though, at keeping the things. I think because I'm detailed, I keep too much in my head if I don't try to write it down.
Right.
You're so great about just like, oh, there's a bullet point, and that's what matters.
Right.
And I'm not that way. So.
I know. Yeah. One thing it does really good for us as well is it helps us identify the road that we're on, and if we're going the right way or the wrong way. And for me, I just always like I like what John Maxwell says. He says, if you're going down a road the wrong way, you don't need to speed up. You need to stop.
Yeah, that's true, isn't it?
Yeah. And, a lot of times for the sake of, like, if you've been reflecting on something, but you may hold back telling me for the sake of you don't know how I'll handle it. You don't know if the timing's right. Mm-hmm. Same way, the other way, sure. And what that is encouraging that person in a roundabout way to keep going the wrong way, or what you might be thinking is the wrong way. Because the thing is, it's not necessarily that it's wrong for us as an individual, but it may be wrong for us as a couple.
That's good. So that's a very fine line to motivate your spouse to dream, but then to also say, ooh, that dream may be going down a different direction than what we thought we were going down. Is that what you're saying?
Has the vision changed? Or has the goal changed towards the vision? Right.
Yeah. Is that direction? Is that road? Is that detour still going to get us where we're going to go? Is it just a little more scenic, or are we going to end up in a completely different state?
Right. How does this apply? Mm-hmm. We were watching a show actually earlier, and they were talking about the guys went and sold pizzas in order to make movies. Mm-hmm. That don't sound like it goes together. So how did that work?
It was so cool because he actually loved to make pizza, but his dream, listen to this, but his dream was to always be a producer of movies since he was like 6 years old. Okay. So he took something that he loved, his strength, but he applied it in order to resource what he dreamed about. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes people think, well, my purpose is what I love. Yes and no.
Right.
Sometimes your purpose can be fueled and resourced out of what you loved, but what you're called to do and what you dream about is that passion that exists inside of you. That is
the thing that breaks your heart.
Yeah, it makes you cry, that makes you laugh.
Yeah.
Making pizzas making pizzas I think made him happy because it fed his family. But yeah, so that was very interesting show that we watched on that today.
Oh, that was really good. Reflection requires us to take a pause. It requires us to sit back, figuratively or literally, and really think about what we're thinking about. Mm-hmm. And what it does is it enriches those thoughts.
Oh, I love that word. I love the word.
Expound on it.
I love enrich. Enrich to just expand the richness of your life. We all have richness in our life. Mm-hmm. To be enriched, again, it's kind of like insight. It's to turn inward and see where is that treasure and what is that riches that God has inside of me. And so when I began to use my inward sight and I began to reflect on that, one of the things I love is Psalms 23, that He leads us beside still waters. And I was meditating that passage one day, and just thinking about like, oh, how beautiful is that? I'm thinking of the literal picture of that. And God says, yeah, but so the reason I lead you beside still waters, what is the purpose of a still water? I'm like, I don't know, it's peaceful. And he says, still waters invite reflection.
Mm.
So when you are at a still brook and you look down, you can see the reflection of your face. It's not that you're just seeing what's reflecting back. It should be that you begin to see God in that. And what is he reflecting back? Think about that. When we're always so busy that we're stirring those waters constantly, because usually, let's just be honest, it's not very comfortable sometimes to reflect. It's not comfortable to come through a tough crisis or a season of chaos or something devastating and say, I just want to sit down and be a victim. I want to say, man, this horrible thing happened to me, instead of reflecting on, could this have happened for me? What can I take from this? So when I sit still with God and invite that reflection with him, to be still and know him, that is the space where reflection becomes powerful. So then when we bring that into marriage, because remember, two are better than one, and he is the third cord around that. So how much more powerful when you and I go through a crisis, and we, instead of being frustrated with each other and devastated and victimized, we reflect together on that. And we build each other up through our strength and how we're seeing ourselves the way God made us in that time of reflection.
When I think of a reflection, I like to dabble with painting occasionally, and stuff. And I definitely like looking at really good art. And one of the coolest things is when you see the reflection, when they do a mountain scene or a forest scene, and you see the reflection in the lake that they've drawn. And what you have is so much more clarity. Your focus becomes more almost towards that shoreline, that center.
Yeah,
because you just see, there's so much beauty everywhere.
It's always still.
Always. You can't have the reflection without it, or a good reflection.
Reflection without being still. Yeah. I think for me, that's the key point in that for me.
The still provides the focus.
Still. Yeah.
So it takes away
so you can see what it is that's in that reflection of what you're trying to find.
And one thing when we're going through the reflection, it's stopping and instead of saying, boy, I'm glad that's over, instead we're saying, what can I learn from? What can I grow from this? And, you just take, if married couples would do that with their arguments and their slight to major disagreements. I remember the time that we had a fight, and we were just spending Bible time afterwards. And I came across the scripture, the little foxes spoil the vine. And the more I thought about that, and the more I thought about it, reflected on it, I guess that's what it is. I should be saying reflected.
Yeah, use the right word today.
I realized we didn't fight over major things. We didn't have a lot of major things. What we did is had a lot of built up little things, little foxes. And those little foxes had begun to eat away and spoil the vine. It was robbing the fruit.
It was robbing the fruit, yeah.
And so that was a major breakthrough. And that's when I finally came to you and said, I don't care how bad we want to fight. I ain't fighting with you anymore.
Oh, and that made me mad the first few times.
Yeah, we fought about that.
Because you did fight with me. I'm like, why don't you want to fight about this?
But we both took that, and we would look at each other and we'd say, okay, but I'm not fighting about this.
And we still do that.
Still.
You can see it on my face, and I can see it in your posture. When you want to fight, it's like, this is just a little fox, and I'm just not going to go there.
Right. Because, here's the thing. Little foxes are created by minor disagreements of where you're trying to go with something, no matter what it is. It could be fixing dinner. But what you're trying to go to is, we need dinner. We're hungry, but
we're hangry, so we fight.
Yeah. But no, we tend to think, the outcome is a steak dinner, but I want to eat healthy. So therefore or in your case, you'd want to eat healthy. So therefore you'd love to have some broccoli and cauliflower cooked. And I'm like, but a baked potato, which you're trying to avoid, sounds so much better. So, it can be something as minor as that.
We do fight about, it's a married couple. Married couples fight about some of the most ridiculous things. And it's just because of the proximity. You're with this person all the time. So it just makes sense that you don't fight about that kind of stuff with your friends outside of your marriage. It's just.
And what I like is I like the quote that says, a moment of thought is better than an hour of talk. And how many fights have generated because you just have to get one more word into it. And instead of all we had to do sit back and think about it. Last week I was talking about in the mirror.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
Think,
on my side.
listen,
Yeah.
think, respond. Think twice to everything else you do. Make it twice as much that you're going to think about this.
And I think talking about reflection, sometimes when we have had some unsettling disagreements in terms, I don't know if unsettling is a word, some variations in how we're approaching something, even recently. And what I do, my new way of processing this is, instead of just thinking, whatever, he's just going to get it, he's just going to have to continue to work towards my end goal. I will sit and reflect in my quiet time with God during the week. I'm like, all right, God, what am I missing here? What am I missing? Because he's not an idiot. He's not trying to do something to destroy our marriage. What do I need to let go of? What do I need to flip the script on? And a lot of times he'll show me it's something minor. It's something so small. And then I'll bring it to you. I'm like, hey, is this what you're thinking? Or is it, he's like, and you'd be like, no, that's not at all what I was talking about. But because I did take the time to stop and reflect on that and ask God to show me, two things happen. Because I'm not a person that's just okay with like, well, I just got to shut up and let you do what you want to do. I want to participate. I want to add value, but I can't if I don't understand what it is.
And you can't have a strong marriage if one of your job is to just shut up and listen.
And so that's why, and because I am definitely the weaker personality in terms of that, that's used to be what would happen. I'm like, well, for the sake of peace, I'm just going to go my way.
And that's what leads to those divorces, where someone says, man, the sex was great. We just didn't like each other.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, no, it wasn't you didn't like each other. You didn't respect each other, which created that feeling of dislike. And so it's it's just so important that you just take the time and listen and allow both sides to come out. Think it over.
And you don't have to think. That's what my point of all that long story was. It's not that I sit there and say, wait a minute, let me think about this because before I talk and make you mad. No, it's about knowing, all right, this is something I'm going to go sit in my quiet time and think about. I don't have to tell you that. It's not like, that we have to do all that verbally, but it's the process and the posture of adopting that. So when we take time to pause, I love things to be in order. I learned very well with 1, 2, 3, 4. So one of the things that I loved about this chapter in the book was that he gives me 4 eyes. Okay, we're talking about insight, looking inward, and then 4 eyes.
Yeah, those are 5 eyes.
Oh, is there 5?
Well, if insight's 1.
Well, no, I meant visual. I love the play on words. Okay, so number 1 or number
eyes.
First eye. See, you're not even tracking with me. No.
That was really good.
This has been funny, and you didn't even laugh.
Well,
I missed my opportunity.
I'm not used to the funny.
I know, right? Okay, so investigation. When we take time to pause, so when we're thinking more than we're talking, and when we pause to reflect and allow the growth to catch up with us, that's what this is all about. Investigating is when we pause to find the meaning in what we've experienced. This is what we're just talking about. So if I have something weird happen, it's not about feeling victimized, even though that opportunity is there. It's not about feeling like I just got to throw it in the trash and, okay, well, that didn't work. I can't make pizzas and follow my dream. Okay? It's let me investigate. Let me be curious about what does this experience have an opportunity to teach me?
That's really good. And, I just like the word investigate.
I do too.
That's kind of like, all of a sudden now I am Mel Gibson in a crime movie. What was that? Lethal Weapons.
Lethal Weapons, yeah.
Die Hard.
That's the wrong guy.
And it's all this, and then it just means, okay, I just need to keep finding one more piece of the puzzle, one more piece. And as long as if we'll take the time to do that, all of a sudden you have that whole puzzle put together.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it starts to make sense. I mean, we've all done the whole putting together puzzles, I'm sure. And in the process of putting together a puzzle, the puzzle looks like nothing then it moves to incomplete, another I word. And then, I see it. It's into focus. This is cool.
Yeah. And so I think the investigation process also keeps you curious on that. And then incubation. Sometimes, those experiences that would happen, some experiences you don't have a lot of time to incubate because they're one and done. But there are times when if it's a recurring thing or theme, it's okay to let that crock pot and say, I'm not sure about this yet, babe. I'm going to crock pot this for a while. I want to just let this incubate. I want
Right.
to let it sit here. I'm not saying no. I'm not saying yes. I'm like, let's just sit it under the warmers and let it sit for a while and see
Right.
what happens.
You know,
And I
our
think
daughter has chickens.
yep. That's what I was thinking. The same
And
thing.
one of the cool things about, chickens is, well, it can be cool until you have 10,000 of them, but all of a sudden you look up and you have eggs everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, so what she does is she takes a handful of those eggs and she incubates them.
Yeah.
And what that does is it allows that chicken to grow to its full potential.
Right. Because it's all inside there.
It's all inside.
It's all inside there. But unless you incubate it and create the culture and the time for that to happen, it also makes me think of anything to do with transformation is that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anything in transformation, whether it's a butterfly in a cocoon, a pearl in an oyster shell,
right?
There's a season of incubation where it has to be, you have to leave it alone for a little bit. So I think that's important. And then elimination. What do you think about that I word?
Well, that's the process of placing value on what you've been thinking about.
Yeah.
It's shining a light, kind of, it illuminates the idea, the thoughts that you've been having, again, the focus, and it brings things really into focus. And so, when I think of illumination, I really think of bringing an outside light. So to me, that's almost like where God puts his part on what you've been thinking, and says, okay, you think that's good. Look at this. I'm going to shine this light a little bit over in this dark area. And now that's illuminated. And you're just like, wow, that's good.
And so the way my mind goes is I like how we're talking about pausing and reflection to let your growth catch up with you. And I like how these all flow together, because when you're taking that pause, you start to investigate, because usually a pause is going to come from an experience. You're not just going to come up with something out of the clear blue sky.
Right.
This is reflecting on something that's happening that's causing growth potentially.
Right.
So you're investigating that, and then you realize I need to let it sit for a little bit, and then all of a sudden, as you've investigated it, put it in an incubation process, right?
Right.
Then you find some illumination, and then what happens? Then you get an illustration of how to actually expand and use that experience. So then it's full process.
And to me, that's where marriage becomes a success, because success is sowing seeds that benefit others. And so not only is your marriage better, but now all of a sudden you moved where you're capable of being a mentor in someone else's life, or like trying to help like we do in the coaching areas and stuff. It becomes so much more important it's testing all those ideas out.
Absolutely. There's a scientific method to it. Use some science there.
And so all of a sudden there's value to your thoughts, they
become out there now. Now they're tangible. And it all started with potentially a negative experience. That's the whole point of this. We talk about not being problem focused, but be purpose focused. This is part of that process.
Right.
When you run up against something that's a constant negative in your marriage, begin to reflect on that and begin to say, okay, why is this? Ask better questions. Why is this always an experience that happens?
Right.
How can I investigate this with my husband? How can we do it? What part of this can we incubate? What is God going to illuminate in this potential mess that we saw? We always talk about being a hot mess. Well, pull something out of that. And then all of a sudden you have something that's tangible, that is workable, that you can actually, like you said, not even just your own marriage, but it begins to be a benefit to others, which is the purpose of your marriage, is to always benefit other marriages or people.
Well, I mean, purpose is always for someone else.
Right.
It's real easy for us to, well, what's my purpose? It's to make $1 million. Well, not for you to have $1 million in the bank. It's so you can help other people with it.
What are you doing with that?
What are you doing with it?
Yeah.
And so that's where, when you're reflecting, it's very important to ask good questions, because good questions are at the heart of reflection. And, I always like the why. Now, I don't like it when I'm talking to you or you're talking to me. Why? Okay. Why, you can ask to literally every statement made in the English language. Why can be the next thing for it. So it can be obnoxious. But when you're reflecting, why lets you dig deeper.
It's layering. If you ask why because you're layering and you're pulling back layers, is one thing. If you're asking why because you just want somebody to give you an answer, that's not okay.
Yeah. Dean Grazioso talks about asking why 7 times. And on the 7th time, you'll know why. And I think that's
interesting. That made me think of the Bible verse that says in Micah that though a man falls 7 times, he will arise the 8th.
Oh, I never put those two things together. That's good.
So it could mean that you have 7 failures, but every time you get up, you're asking why. Okay, why did I fall that time? What did I do different? How come? So that's interesting. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. No, that's good.
Things that fall out of my brain, right?
I like it when that falls out.
Okay.
It's all that other goo.
It's all the goo. Sometimes something good comes out. So yeah, so the heart of reflection is asking questions. And that's, if you're not asking questions, then you're not going to have growth because you're not investigating a different area of your life. And
right.
It can be uncomfortable, but you need to be, I read this the other day, you need to become comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yes.
So that seems like a weird statement, but
it does, but it makes sense because
it's almost like realizing that failing forward is okay. Failing is not something negative. Failing is positive.
In life, comfort at the end of the day is your pajamas and your bed. Okay. If you don't finally get to a point the next morning where you're uncomfortable lying there, you're going to stay there.
Yeah.
So in the growth process and in the process of reflecting and trying to get something out of that, we need to be comfortable going to that next. Okay. It's uncomfortable in the bed. It's uncomfortable out of the bed because it's usually cold.
That's what I was thinking, in dark.
And you're like, I don't want to get out right now, but if I lay here any longer, I'm going to be so stiff and sore I can't function the rest of the day. So because we're in our 50s. So yeah, being comfortable saying, okay, it's time to get moving. It's time to do something.
And this goes back to having a thriving marriage. This is why it's so important to have and to be that spouse that will motivate. I hesitate with that word, but maybe you have a better word. Each other to get up and keep moving. And, I think that's, if you're by yourself, that's why two are better than one.
Right.
Because it's going to be a rare season in a marriage. If you're moving in the right direction together, that both of you, and when I say rare season, it's usually a pretty difficult season, but there's not more than a handful of those in any marriage.
Right.
Normally.
Yeah.
So
usually it's a handful of difficult times that we allow to last a long time.
Right.
And that's the problem. That's why it ain't that, it's just everything. No, it's if you get to the seed, there's very few seeds that's causing all those bad fruit to show up.
And again, it goes back to communication.
So as we wind down, there's a final statement: the practice asking questions that will give you better answers.
Oh, can I read it as he actually says it?
Oh yeah.
Practice asking questions will give you better questions and better asking skills. So when you begin to practice asking questions, at first you'll feel really awkward with it. But the more you practice, the better the questions not only become, but the better you are at asking them. So in our time together, you are really good at asking me questions that help me very quickly get to the bottom of things. So you want to give a few, let's give the viewers a few questions.
Okay. Of course, the question I always like is, do you want to do it?
Yeah, that's always your question. That's true. So that's Grant's number one question. So that would be then, what is my biggest asset? So I'm not going to say that because if that goes with your question. But here's a question you can ask that. These are some questions you can, I keep saying that over and over and over.
Right.
But for our viewers, you don't always know the best ones to ask. Those words are hard to say together. Okay. So how about this? What is my most worthwhile emotion? That's a good question to ask your spouse. What's another one? How about, what is my best habit? Instead of always being negative about your spouse's habit, say, what is my best habit? That's a good question to ask.
And they're a good question to ask your spouse. Yeah, to ask your spouse directly. You're asking yourself that.
Sure, yeah.
Because you need to become self-aware and accepting of who you are so you know where to grow from. But you also need the affirmation from your spouse that says, this is why I think that's valuable.
Right.
For me, we're I always say dotting the I's, crossing the T's, but it's, that is one of your habits, but that habit creates closure on everything that we do. Where I have more of the habit of giving you the idea and getting it started good. Yeah. And then if you weren't coming in there and actually finish dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and providing closure, we would just have a million things going on that never accomplished it.
But if I didn't have you who had the habit of seeking, it's almost like maybe we don't hunt or gather anymore, but you do that with ideas. So if you were out there seeking ideas and seeking different perceptions of things, I would never be any place different than I am right now. So we can see right there how there could be a lot of little foxes in there, but how we're always recognizing that in each other and asking those questions, well, whatever. So anyway, so there's some good questions in there. But yeah, begin to practice asking questions so that you will be better at asking questions.
Right.
Which is going to help you to reflect better.
And there's quite a few. There's 8 or so. Yeah, we'll list these in the comments. So, but let's wind it down. I really enjoyed this one. I like the lesson, going over it, and I've enjoyed doing this one.
Well, we love to reflect. This is something we love to do as a couple. So this is really our sweet spot.
We've mentioned it before. One thing we love to do is it's usually a Friday night. We get around the table, and it's kind of like you said.
It's a reflection period.
It is a reflection, but it's almost like a reflection in action. It's almost like we don't even realize we've been reflecting on some of it.
That's what's so cool. Yeah.
It's kind of like, once you said that, now I remember thinking this earlier in the week.
Grab a journal and you have to listen to my thoughts.
Yeah. And most of the time they're pretty good. So, but anyway,
you asked, do you want to go do it?
Yeah. And action. So, faith without works is dead.
It is a marriage podcast.
It is a marriage podcast. Anyway, so we hope that you enjoyed the podcast as much as we enjoyed doing it tonight. And we just ask that you go find us on YouTube and all the social media junk that's out there that we all enjoy.
With Grant and Stephanie.
Don't do pillow talk.
You'll get something vulgar. Have our names in there.
And so anyway, go to foreverwithpurpose.com. All the links to everything that we do is on that. And shoot us any questions or statements. We would love to take some of your all's thoughts and make a podcast out of that. So
we'll even give you credit for it. Man, I mean, if it's
we'll do credit. So thanks again. Join us next week on Pillow Talk with Grant and Stephanie.